Hey beauties, it's Riri. If you're new here, I'm an over 40 lover of all things beauty and I love showcasing indie brands here on my channel. If that sounds like your cup of tea, please consider subscribing and give the video a thumbs up. We're diving right in. This is all about my top 10 sneak peek palettes of 2024. I'm quickly going to run down. I have looks with every single one of these palettes. I'll quickly run down why I chose them, why I like them, why I continue to reach for them, and then we will dabble in a couple of them and put a couple on our eyes. First up, and these are not in any particular order, I love them all. I love them all. And there are more that I love also, but when I kind of put it down to like the bare bones of what am I reaching for consistently, what do I know I'll reach for consistently, these are them. And first up is, of course, indie brand. I think everything here is an indie brand. Can't help it. Sorry, you guys. And if I have any discount codes or anything like that, they'll all be linked down below. First up is the Gourmande Girls Frozen Kiss palette. And this is one for me that's not kind of a traditional, if you will, Riri color story, because I don't often reach for blues and purples. But there's something about, specifically for this time of the year and specifically at launch time, there's something specifically that just spoke to me in terms of it being very winter-esque, very winter forward, but also a little bit of romance, a little bit of moodiness. It's definitely got some depth. It has some really, really special like multi and duochrome shades in here. It's beautiful, you guys. It's lovely. I love her formula. I feel like she does color stories really beautifully and in a really kind of cool and unique way. So that is definitely part of my top 10. Next up, another indie brand, and one of my favorite indie brands, of course, is Nomad Cosmetics. And this is the Ireland Wild Atlantic Way palette. The second I saw the little sneak peek for this, and they showed this little thing right here, I already knew, y'all, and my little green loving heart self said, I already know this is an Irish palette. I am Irish. I've always wanted to go to Ireland, so this is definitely a match made in heaven for me. The packaging, first and foremost, is beautiful. They give back. They pay attention to color story, theming, names. They give back, like I said, that I love. And most importantly for me, two things. I love the layouts. I love that this is very beginner friendly. Every single palette I've ever gotten from them, whether I paid for it or received it in PR, every palette that I've ever gotten, I speak to that all the time, how beginner friendly they are. And I love here, again, that it goes from very light to very dark, and I love the mix of the mattes to the shimmers here. And then another incredibly important thing for me, and I speak to this all the time, is long wearability. I do not like to sit down, whether it's a 5-minute eye look or a 45-minute eye look or however long. I don't want to sit down, do an eye look, and then 5 seconds later it is dusted away. And I never had that issue with Nomad Cosmetics. This is a me palette. This is a Riri palette through and through. I also really love that they did an Irish themed palette, but they took inspiration from the countryside, from the landscapes. So there's also a little bit of blues. There's a little bit of warmth. Just, y'all, they do it well, in my opinion. I love this palette. I love this palette so much. You guys know I am a green lover through and through. And to have a palette that is green leaning, but it offers a little bit of neutrality. And then we also have the little pops of color with the blues and with the warm tones. It's just lovely. It's beautiful. And the packaging, I love. I love Nomad so much. You guys know that. Next up, another brand that I love. They're Cosmic Beauty, but they, I think, recently switched over to Cosmic Brushes or vice versa. I could 100% be wrong, y'all, and I'm sorry if I am. But this is my third palette from them, I believe. This is the Undergrowth palette. And I'm trying to look on here to see. Yeah, see, this still says Cosmic Brushes, but then on their social media, I'm seeing Cosmic Beauty. So maybe you guys can help me out. Comment down below. Let me know. This is another one that kind of runs along the lines of the Irish palette. It is a beautiful kind of green, but leaning more grunge type of palette. I love, and I cannot express how much I love this palette. I love the fact, again, it's neutral. There are different tones of greens. There are more kind of cool tone, green leaning browns. There are some earthy browns. There's some really pretty like yellowy tones. I love this. And you guys, I speak to this a lot when I talk about Cosmic Beauty or Cosmic Brushes. I don't know how they are so affordable. I genuinely do not. Like, I have palettes, one particular in this, you know, top 10 that was astronomically priced, and I'm happy to pay for it, and it's great, and I love it. It's in the top 10, but their palettes are like $35, which is wild to me. They are so underrated in my personal opinion. They blend well, they layer well, they build well, and they last a long time on my lids. Beautiful color story. Again, light to dark, beautiful kind of unique little pops of color in here as well. It is stunning, stunningly beautiful. I love it. Next up, speaking of incredibly expensive, this was $128. I did have a coupon, and I also got a little bit of, you know, money off of it, but still very pricey. Very, very pricey. And guess what? Worth every damn penny, in my opinion. It is her brand new LIGHTWORK palette. She basically took the internet by storm with this particular palette, if I can make sure it's not upside down for y'all. Just everything about this, the ingenuity here, having the little plate here, which happens to be your mirror. The plate comes off, and then each individual 6-pan palette can stack together, and then that plate becomes, you know, your lid. I have a couple of videos up with this particular palette. I love this palette. This is one of my top picks. If I was doing just like a top 10 beauty products in general for 2024, this would absolutely be in that type of video. And I like that we have one that's more of like pinky purpley, and then kind of the corresponding shimmers to go there. There are different formulations here. We have one a little bit more blue leaning. We have one a little bit more warm tone slash green slash a little bit more grungy, which is what I prefer. But it's stunning, you guys. And then like even these beautiful shades like this beautiful translucent shade, it looks like nothing. It looks like a bunch of nothing. And then when you get up close, you see that blue, you see that green. It is incredibly beautiful. These are stunning. I'm happy to have this. If you were going to splurge, and you guys know I will never be that person to be like, I'm obsessed, you need this right now. No. If you're on the fence, or if you have been looking and you're like, you know what, I really want to spoil myself. Maybe you got a Danessa Myricks gift card, a Sephora card, whatever the case may be, and you've kind of been on the fence over it. Again, you can go check out my other 2 videos. I went really, really in depth with this. If you were going to splurge, this is something that I would say I highly recommend, and I think it is 1000% worth the price. I love it. I'm happy to have it. It's incredible. I love it. Next up is, of course, another NOMAD Cosmetics palette. This one is a little bit newer release for them towards the end of the year. This is the Chicago Speakeasy palette. And again, the attention to detail, the packaging, the theming, the color stories, the way that they are laid out. I don't like that this one doesn't bend all the way back. I probably could force it, but then it would kind of break the binding right there. That's the only little qualm about it. But I love that this again is not a traditional kind of Riri palette. I don't often reach for like, you know, cool tones and purples and mauves and things like that, which, you know, I've said it a million times. Brown eyes and purples, match made in makeup heaven, you guys. Perfection on the eyes. But there's something about it. There's something about it, these kind of more dusty shades, I call them. And then over here, of course, we've got a lot more warmth, a lot more richness. I just think it is beautiful. And I love that I can use this year round. This is not synonymous with any time of the year. I can go in and use the entire palette consistently all the time, every single day. It could be an everyday palette because it does offer that neutrality. But then if you are more of that, you know, moody, dusty, you know, cool tones, mauves, purples, then there's something in here for you as well. And again, it goes light to dark. There are, again, some incredibly beautiful special shades in here that I really, really love. I think it's beautiful. It is really beautiful. Definitely a standout palette in my collection and a standout palette from this past year. Aside from literally one palette where a couple of the shimmers were incredibly hard panned, zero complaints when it comes to Nomad. I think they do a beautiful formula, and they also keep a consistent formula and at a really fair price point, in my opinion. So that is also part of the top 10. Next up, we have another one from Gourmande Girls. This is the Calavera palette. This was kind of a nod to her grandparents. This does fold all the way back, and this was her first time doing a larger kind of mega palette, if you will. And what I love about this one, and again, it's not usually a Riri palette because I'm not a kind of rainbow palette person. I'm typically very neutral, very warm neutral, or green grunge. There's kind of no in between generally for me, but I like that it literally runs the gamut of everything. There's a white and a black. There are some neons. There are some more pastelized shades. There are your deep, dark, kind of, you know, moody shades. There's something about this particular palette that I really, really love because it is so different, because it is something that's not kind of my traditional. And I've done about 7 different looks with this. And when I first got this, you guys, I was sick, like incredibly sick. And I did 4 looks even being as sick as I was because I saw it and I was immediately drawn in. Like even right now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, that with the sparkly black on top, punch that on the lower lash line, put that in the inner corner. You know, you can build up the greens and do different green shades, do up the different purples and blues together. There's just something beautiful and special about it. I love it. I think that she absolutely nailed this color. Do you see that? She nailed the color story here. She nailed this palette. Like this shade right here, it is a little bit crumbly, but when it gets smoothed out, the different shifts in here and the way that this looks on the eyes, and then this sequin shade, I've never seen a sequin shade. And of course, you know, brands like ColourPop have been doing these for years, but generally I don't really care for sequin shades. They don't always look the most pretty or impactful, and kind of the impact part of it goes away. This does not do that. Like you can still see it, it's stunning. And I like that I can use this, again, year round. Is it the most, you know, there's not a lot of neutral happening here. So if you just are very anti-color, obviously this is not for you. But I think she did a really good job on it. I love it. I'm incredibly happy to have it. Next up, we have a couple of brand new brands to me, which I was so excited about. I tried so many different brands this year, you guys, and I was blown away. First up is the Blood Moon palette from Electrum Cosmetics. Look, y'all, I waited for like 8 weeks for this palette. It was a pre-order, again, an indie brand. And it was a recommendation from my girl Debutante, and I will link her down below for you guys. But if I don't, please type in @Debutante, okay? Because she's wonderful. But she did a live showcasing this, and I was like, you know what? I need that. And I was so scared that I was not going to like it, and it was pricey, and I waited forever. But you guys, oh my gosh, this is exquisitely beautiful. Definitely different to anything else that I have in my collection, but the different shifts, the different formulas that are in here, there are some that are a little bit more kind of crumbly. There are some that are incredibly, incredibly smooth. Y'all, this is a special palette, in my opinione. Beautiful, beautiful formula. They blend out incredibly well. Again, lasted a long time, which I speak to that a lot, is super important to me. And I know that to some people, even when I originally got it in person, I was like, why did I buy this? But I can go in with this shade, and this shade, and I'm building up a beautiful deep dark blue intense, you know, look. I can go in with these and kind of lean a little bit more warm tone. I can go in like a plum shade, you guys, like a berry merlot type shade with a teal. Yes, please. And again, I have looks with all of these. There's just something magical about it. It's really beautiful. It's quite unique. And I love the different, like I said, the different textures and finishes and stuff like that. I had a really, really good time with this palette, you guys. I love it. I will definitely try more from her after 2025 when I'm not on a no buy anywhere. Next up, a brand new brand to myself. And now I have 2 or 3 different palettes from them. Is Dede Signature. This is the Chrome Book, Volume 1. I also have one of her palettes that was in an Ice Cream Beauty box that I really enjoyed that as well. This is an all shimmer palette, and it is stunning. And if you have been with me for a little while, you guys know that I kind of have a traditional or a classic me look. I take my pinky, I go into a very light shimmer, put it on my inner corner, go in with another shade, put it across the ball of the lid, go with another shade, and put it on the outer corner, and I call it a wrap. I'm all for a look that is both incredibly easy. I try to make sure everything I do on my channel here is very beginner friendly, but I also like impact. And this does that for me. I can go in and do kind of my signature look, if you will, or I could go in with any matte from any of these other palettes, go in with a couple of mattes, build up my crease, build up my outer corner if I wanted to, and then go in and layer these on. It's beautiful. And again, different finishes, like this one is incredibly silky smooth. This one's kind of mushy, a little bit more putty-like. We have some that offer a little bit more of like a flaky texture. All of them equally as beautiful. And they just, you guys know I'm a sucker for shades like this. That's why that Danessa Myricks palette, honey, it was worth every penny to me. Every penny. All right, that was the Dede signature. Next up, this is, I think, my third palette from Fantasy Cosmetica. This is the Harvest of Souls palette. And I love this. As soon as I saw the sneak peeks and the way that each kind of little colorway or color story was set out, I was like, yes, please. I'm game. I'm down. This is, if you are like me and like that more kind of green leaning grunge, or if you like cool tones, or if you like moody, this is kind of for a lot of people. I think that she does color stories impeccably well. They are quite unique, and I think her formula itself is also very, very nice, very long lasting. I love this. I love the color story here. I like the layout. I like, again, I speak to this all the time with something being very beginner friendly. Now, is this the most, if you're kind of nervous about makeup, or even if you're looking at this, you're like, ooh, I don't know, because you're going to end up with something a little bit more dark, or a little bit more kind of moody, if you will, a little bit more grungy. If that is the case, and you ever get afraid of something like that, because there is pretty much just kind of one lighter shade in here. This one is more of a neon, but you could buff it out and make it a little bit lighter. If you go in with just even a neutral, go in with whatever blush shade you used, go in with whatever bronzer shade you used. Pop that in your crease, then kind of play off of these and build it up a little bit to your desired, you know, intensity and stuff like that. I think we often kind of get stuck in a rut, or we fear something that is a little bit different. It does kind of, when you look at this, you instantly think, oh, this is going to be moody. It's going to automatically be dark. If that's not what you want, that's fine. You can go in even with an open fluffy brush. I talk about this all the time as well. The more open and fluffy and kind of flimsy the brush is, and the further down the handle of the brush you hold it, you can pick up like this shade right here, and you can tap it off, and you can go in and you can make this shade incredibly light. Like if you want a little dusting of that shade, you can go in and do that. So that's also a really good rule of thumb. For me, it's not an intimidating palette, although I generally do like light to dark. There's something, it's beautiful. It is stunning. She has a great, great formula. I think another brand that's pretty underrated, and she does a really good job, also stays at a really affordable price point. Y'all, palettes are getting astronomically expensive. And then last but not least, in my top 10, again, no particular order, is the Ensley Rain Cosmic Dreamer. I don't think this came out this year. I just happened to purchase it this year, well, 2024. And I love it. I do know that they have a little bit of drama going on right now. We know that this channel is not about that. It's about the makeup, not anything else. And if you don't want to support a brand, don't support a brand. But it is the Cosmic Dreamer palette. It was my very first purchase through Ensley Rain, and I was very impressed. This kind of runs along the same line as a couple of these other ones, where it's leaning a little bit more grunge, a little bit more jewel toned, a little bit more moody. We have a little bit of like the pretty pinks and stuff like that. Again, I love the layout here. We've got more like warm orangey. We've got grunge in like these two rows. We've got like very deep dark moody with kind of more blues and blacks. And I thought that they had a great formula. I really enjoyed playing with this palette too. And I didn't have any problem with any kind of fading or anything like that. Some of these shimmers, which this happens a lot through many brands, because I do have hooded lids, sometimes they'll start to crease. I literally just take my finger like this across my lid, you guys, and I buff it out, and it's totally fine. I really, really had a good time this year finding new brands, testing new brands, and these palettes for me in my collection are the ones that this past year, they really, really stood out to me, and I had a great makeup year. I'm just going to say that. Like, more specifically, like the Danessa Myricks of all of these, I know it's incredibly pricey, but there's just something beautiful and wonderful and just magical about that palette. I love it. But that is my top 10 favorite palettes. I'm going to prime very quickly, and then we'll do a quick eye look. And speaking of priming, I'm going to go through my top 2 primers also of 2024. This is the Alter Ego, the eyeshadow base. It's almost gone. This was gifted. I love this. It is quite thin. It gives a little bit of coverage, meaning it's not going to be, you know, like a MAC paint pot or like a P. Louise base or anything like that. Like, you can still see, like, if you've got some sallowness or veining and stuff like that, it's maybe not going to cover all of that, but it feels very, very light. It doesn't have, like, a sticky base or anything like that. It just kind of dries down and is this very sheer, very thin little, you know, very thin primer, and I think it's lovely. It's great. I would absolutely repurchase this, and it's probably like $6. My other favorites forever, you guys know this, is the Anastasia Beverly Hills eye primer. It's lovely. If you're looking for something slightly thicker but offers the actual coverage that you maybe would want to cover sallowness, veining, things like that, discoloration, but still thin enough that it doesn't feel heavy or anything like that, this is a wonderful option. The paint pot from MAC, I love that. It's not super dry skin eye friendly, so noting that for you guys. And then the other one is a newer find to me. This is the Gourmande Girls Glitter Primer. I'll showcase that in just a second. This is my favorite glitter primer of all time, and here's why. It is incredibly thin. It almost feels like a serum. It is super, super thin, you guys. And it's sticky without being thick. It is sticky without pulling up the mats underneath. It is lovely. I paid for this myself. And I will note, I would have popped up here which palettes were gifted and which ones I bought. You can assume, generally speaking, if it has come from Alter Ego, Gourmande Girls, or Nomad Cosmetics, it was gifted. And I do have codes with all of them. The one from Alter Ego and the one from Gourmande Girls are affiliated. Nomad Cosmetics is not, and my code with most brands is RIRI10 for 10% off. So we have the Alter Ego on. I think I'm just gonna grab the Calavera palette. I think. I don't know, you guys. I like so many of them that I kind of want to use all of them. I don't want to go back in with Harvest of Souls. I feel like I want to do Harvest of Souls because I really want to go into Ambition. I'm going to go in with a fluffy brush, but I do want to use them in action with you guys. Fluffy brush, going into the entire crease. There is quite a bit of kick up in this pan, like in quite a few of the shades that I have tested out. I note that for you guys, it is not something that bothers me. I'm going in and taking a less is more approach. Again, fluffy brush, and I'm holding it way down here. That's going to allow me to get a lesser, you know, amount of pigment placed down. And then if I wanted to amp it up, I could. Okay, going into a slightly smaller brush. I'm going to go into, I never know how to say this, L-I-C-H, like, lick, I don't know. And I'm keeping that very low and very round. And I like to, as you guys can see, stamp these in place. I feel like, first of all, that gives me a little bit more control. And then when I'm stamping versus kind of going straight in and blending, I am able to get the level of opacity that I'm looking for. And I can generally, with most brands, I can generally reach pan color. Then when I've reached the level of opacity that I'm going for, I think I'm going to go about almost halfway. Then from here, when I don't have a lot of product left, I am going to gently feather that back and forth. And then from here, tiny, tiny little circular strokes. Just to make sure I have a really pretty gradient there. Tapping this brush off, I do keep a towel down here. I'm going to go into Poison, which is that neon. And in between where I left off with that other shade and where I have bare skin, so kind of at my line of demarcation, again, patting it into place. I'm going to place this, and I'm going to come almost all the way up to my brow bone. And you guys can see in real time, I'm doing this with you. And then again, teeny tiny circular motions. And all that does is just ensure that I have a nice gradient between all of my shades. That is it for the mattes. Then I think I'm gonna go into, there's so many beautiful shades that I maybe should have planned this. I think I'm gonna go into the Danessa Myricks one. I'm gonna lay down a tiny bit of that Gourmande Girls primer. And a little goes a long way. You do not need much at all. And again, very slippy, very thin. It feels like a thin serum. It's lovely. Like I am going to repurchase. And you can see it did not pick up these shades underneath, which a few of them have done. I'm just gonna give that a second. And then I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna go into this section right here with just my pinky. I'm gonna pick some up. Oh, so beautiful. And I'm gonna pop that on the inner corner. And a little bit onto my lid. Oh, that is stunning. That's beautiful. And then I think I'm gonna go right here. Beautiful, you guys. Beautiful. Of course, if you wanted to be a little bit more precise, you can go in with a brush, silicone applicator, an old school sponge, whatever is your preference. I do want to leave some of that intensity there. And that is it. That is my eye look. Very beginner friendly, but impactful, which you guys know are my favorite. Let me do the other eye off camera. I'll be right back and we'll wrap things up. All right, beauties, here is the finished look using my favorite palettes, some of them from 2024. I hope you guys like this video. Please don't forget to comment down below what your favorite palettes were for 2024.